The tale begins in the hush of sealed archives, where even dust dares not stir. There, among forgotten scrolls and data crystals long denied the light of day, the first whispers speak of the eyes of the Emperor, custodians who have laid down their gilded panoply yet refuse to lay down their eternal charge. The Custodes, those golden giants who stand as the very flesh and blood ramparts of the master of mankind, are no strangers to sacrifice. For 10,000 years they have stood upon the marble floors of the imperial palace, each one a living weapon wrought through artifice and faith. Yet not even their engineered perfection can stave off the attrition of centuries. Age gnaws slowly, wounds compound, augmetics dull senses once sharper than blades. What becomes of such a warrior when the body that bore the Emperor's will falters? Death is not their answer. Exile is not their shame. Instead, they pass through a transformation both sacred and terrible. When a custodian can no longer match the unyielding standard of his brethren, he does not fade into silence upon Terra's soil. He walks instead the path into shadow. Before he departs, a ritual takes place, solemn and immutable. The warrior returns to the Hall of Armaments, that vault of eternal steel where relics rest upon adamantine plinths. Every auramite plate, every guardian spear, every weapon whose shine once blinded the foes of mankind is surrendered to the armourers. It is not a gesture of failure. It is the recognition that these weapons must return to the Custodes, still able to wield them without hesitation or flaw. From that moment, the warrior ceases to be one among the 10,000. His oaths are not revoked, but reshaped. He dons not the golden armour of the Emperor's court, but a robe of shadowed black, hooded and severe, masking the features that once gleamed with transhuman majesty. He passes through gates known only to his kin, into the labyrinth of Terra's lower halls, and thence out into the void of the galaxy. The citizen who glimpses him, robed and faceless in some forgotten port, would see only a figure of forbidding silence, never knowing the power that still dwells within. Yet why? Why does the Captain General permit these warriors to vanish beyond the cradle of the Imperium? Because service to the Emperor is never ended. The eyes of the Emperor are custodians still, though they no longer stand upon the palace steps. They wander unseen among the stars, their vigilance extended beyond the walls of Terra. Where they travel, they watch. Where they linger, they listen. Their mission is not to command armies, nor to guard gates of gold, but to see, to detect the hand of treachery, to unmask the creeping poison of heresy, to mark the Xeno's threat long before it dares to touch holy Terra. In truth, their exile is a second consecration. They have exchanged the visible majesty of auramite for the invisible burden of suspicion, fear, and secret knowledge. To live as an eye of the Emperor is to carry a truth too heavy for the countless billions of the Imperium, that even the throne cannot see all, and that eyes are needed still in the darkness where faith alone cannot reach. One might imagine the bitterness of such a passage, the grief of surrendering one's armour and kin. Yet the testimonies, scarce as they are, suggest otherwise. The eyes do not weep as they walk into shadow. They go with bowed heads, but unbroken wills. They understand, more than most, that the Emperor's watchfulness requires forms beyond the visible. Some vanish into the winding arteries of Terra itself, cloaked shadows in the hives of the cradle world. Others cross the stars, appearing in hive spires and merchant void docks, always as watchers and judges. There are accounts, never official yet passed like contraband whispers, of eyes glimpsed during times of strange upheaval. A governor vanishes on the eve of rebellion. A cult is uprooted before it can strike. An eye moves on, leaving only silence in his wake. And so the paradox stands. The 10,000 are eternal, yet even among their number, there are those who must step beyond the gilded gates. They are the exiled sentinels, unrecognized by any, yet feared when their presence is revealed. To speak of them is dangerous. To claim to have seen one is to invite doubt and suspicion. To ignore them is folly. The eyes of the Emperor are shadows cast by the throne itself. The first mark of their transformation lies in the robe. It is a simple garment in form, yet its weight is greater than auramite. Black, unadorned, and drawn with a hood that casts their features into shadow, it proclaims to all who know what they behold, here walks one who has laid aside glory for vigilance. Within the Custodes themselves, the robe is as sacred as any relic, for it is not merely clothing, it is renunciation. It is a relinquishing of splendor in order to assume invisibility. The symbolism strikes deep. The gold of the Custodian was both armor and proclamation, an eternal reminder to every citizen of Terra that the Emperor's guardians yet lived. To strip it away is to renounce recognition. The eye becomes faceless, and in that facelessness gains a potency his aura might never could grant. Fear, not reverence, becomes his aura. Whispers tell of governors who shuddered when a black-robed figure appeared in their audience halls, refusing gifts, uttering few words, and leaving only a silence that echoed long after. And yet these eyes are not broken men. They are warriors who have endured more than any mortal soul could hope to comprehend. Some bear wounds so deep that even the gene-forged miracles of the Custodes could not mend them. One might have lost his sight to a demon's lash and replaced it with augmetics that can pierce deception better than the eye of flesh. Another may walk with limbs of gold-forged iron, slower than before, yet no less capable of gripping a throat in final judgment. They are living testaments to endurance. Their scars are not weakness, but scars accepted as proof of service beyond all reckoning. And in truth, the robe hides more than wounds. It conceals identity itself. When a custodian becomes an eye, he becomes nameless. His former glories, his triumphs upon the blood-strewn plains of the Webway War or the defense of the Imperial Palace are set aside. He speaks with the voice of the Emperor's unseen sight, not his own. In this anonymity, the eye finds a new power, for none may strike bargains with him, none may flatter or bribe, none may trace his lineage or call upon past deeds. Yet those who have beheld them in motion, rare souls who lived long enough to recount such an encounter, speak of the aura that clings still. They may wear no gold, but the transhuman poise cannot be shed. Even in a seedy void port, where dockside merchants haggle over grain shipments, an eye can silence a chamber with a single step. There is something in their bearing, a gravity, a reminder of what they once were. The robe does not erase the custodian, it cloaks him. Beneath still moves a son of the Emperor's gene-forged legion, slowed but not diminished. Their methods, too, flow from this mantle of shadow. Unlike the warriors of the palace, who declare their might openly in radiant splendor, the eyes operate through subtler means. Some cultivate networks of informants, stringing webs that touch guildmasters, gang chiefs, and Navi's captains alike. Others prefer intimidation, their very presence a weapon sharper than any blade. A whisper in the right ear, a hooded visit at dusk, a single phrase spoken in a voice too calm for comfort. These can unravel conspiracies before they ever ignite into open flame. Fear is their weapon, anonymity their shield. And unlike the Inquisition, who wield terror as an instrument of dominion, the eyes are bound only to the throne. They do not scheme for personal gain, nor prosecute agendas beyond their watch. Their task is singular: safeguard the cradle of mankind by ensuring that no threat matures unseen. What is most haunting, perhaps, is that they succeed. Countless uprisings, rebellions, and heretical cabals never ripened into crises, because an eye, cloaked and nameless, intervened long before the Inquisition, long before the Astra Militarum, long before the galaxy's gaze turned. Many of these actions will never be known, erased as if they had never occurred. But the absence of disaster is itself their testament. The robe of the eye is therefore more than black cloth. It is a mantle of fear, a cloak of silence, and a second skin of eternal duty. It is the sign that service to the Emperor does not end with flesh, nor even with honor. It simply changes form, shifting from golden light to shadowed gaze. They are still custodians. They always will be. But in their new guise, they become something rarer still, the Emperor's sight, where even the Astronomicon does not shine. In the endless sprawl of the Imperium, the eyes of the Emperor do not move like generals nor command like admirals. Their reach is quieter, their influence braided through the veins of cities, the corridors of void ships, and the courts of petty lords. They are watchers, and where they walk, networks spring forth like roots through stone. Imagine a hive city, a cathedral of steel rising miles into polluted skies, with 1 billion souls pressed into its walls. To such a place an eye might come, nameless and cloaked, entering through a forgotten port, or stepping silently from a pilgrim transport. He claims no rank, yet those with eyes sharpened by fear sense what he is. Within weeks, a gang leader whispers of strange visits in the night. A manufacturer overseer discovers that missing tithes are noticed. A noble house receives a visitor who speaks only a single sentence before departing, leaving the family's matriarch trembling. The eye does not work alone. He never could, for even the custodians are but one where billions team. Instead, he binds others to his gaze. Informants arise in every echelon, guildmasters cowed into obedience, administratum clerks lured by promises or crushed by veiled threats, mercenaries who take coin without ever knowing whose hand it was. These agents serve in ignorance, never grasping that they are threads woven into a tapestry far larger than their lives. Fear is often the binding agent. A custodian does not need to raise his hand when his presence alone can break a man. The weight of his gaze, augmetic or natural, it matters little, can be enough to still tongues and harden oaths. And yet fear is not always the only chord. There are those who are compelled by awe, sensing in the eye a fragment of divine majesty, and they become fanatically loyal. To them, serving such a figure is itself a sacrament, a way of brushing against the emperor's will in a form they can comprehend. In this manner, the eyes spread invisible webs across the Imperium. They do not rival the Inquisition in scope, nor do they seek to. Where the Inquisition prosecutes, the eyes prepare. They observe, they wait, they whisper. When the strands of conspiracy quiver, the eye takes note, tracing movements until the true threat reveals itself. There are stories, always whispered, never proven, of rebellions ended before the first weapon was raised. A planetary governor found lifeless in his chambers, though no assassin was seen entering. A cult's high priest denounced by his own followers, their minds broken after a single conversation with a hooded figure. A rogue trader's convoy vanished after taking passage for an unknown client who spoke little and paid much. In all these tales, the pattern is the same. An invisible hand moved first, leaving no trace but silence. And what of the worlds themselves, shaped by the presence of such watchers? Some speak of planets that seemed unnaturally calm, where uprisings never ignited though all the conditions for rebellion burned beneath the surface. Others describe regions haunted by the memory of an eye's visit, where no governor dared to stray, no priest dared to waver. In these places, the will of the emperor seemed closer, the shadow of terror felt heavier. But there is unease too. For if the eyes weave their networks in secret, how can one be sure whether the informant beside you whispers for them? How many administratum clerks have signed false ledgers at the command of a faceless master? How many captains have redirected shipments not knowing that an unseen gaze guided their hand? To live within the Imperium is already to dwell under the weight of endless surveillance, the Arbites, the Inquisition, the Ecclesiarchy, but the eyes bring a different fear. They do not declare themselves, they do not brandish sigils, they simply exist. Whispers travel with them. On some worlds, people murmur that the eyes are ghosts, spirits of dead custodians who could not rest. In void ports, they are said to be death omens, harbingers of coming purges. And in certain secret shrines of the Ministorum, priests whisper that the eyes are not men at all, but fragments of the Emperor's will given form. None of these tales is true, yet none is entirely false. For the eyes thrive on such rumour. They are not meant to be understood. They are meant to be feared. Thus they move through the veins of the Imperium, unseen yet ever watching, and where they linger, silence takes root. One cannot track their paths, only their absence. The Emperor's sight extends beyond the golden throne, and in the black-robed wanderers lies the proof. Not all who watch can act, but all who see can speak. The eyes of the Emperor are forbidden from wielding authority openly, for they no longer bear the armor that marks them as the 10,000. Yet their purpose is fulfilled through a more secretive, more potent channel. The black messages, communiques carried along threads unseen, whose destination is always the Captain General of the Adeptus Custodes. The manner of this transmission is cloaked in mystery. No vox records it, no astropath confesses to bearing it. Yet the warnings arrive. One day, a sealed report rests upon a golden lectern in the inner sanctum of the palace. Another day, a custodian on the farthest frontier of the segmentum solar receives orders from Terra, instructions that trace back not to the Senatorum Imperialis, nor the Ordo Hereticus, but directly to the hand of his Captain General. The warning comes like thunder, yet the source is smoke. Only the eyes can have carried it. And these warnings are never idle. When the Captain General moves his hand, retribution follows with the swiftness of divine judgment. There are records, scattered in histories later redacted, of sudden strikes made by custodian contingents upon distant worlds where rebellion was still but a murmur. A hive city is pacified in a single night, its nascent cults obliterated before they could raise banners. A planetary governor is deposed by custodian intervention before his treason could flower into civil war. A renegade warband of astartes vanishes in a storm of golden fire, their fortress stripped to ash without warning. Always, before these acts, there was a whisper. Always, somewhere unseen, an eye had watched, weighed, and spoken. What is most remarkable is the restraint. The eyes of the Emperor do not speak at every danger. The galaxy is ever on fire, and the Imperium trembles daily on the edge of dissolution. Were they to cry warning at every tremor, their voices would become noise. Instead, they are precise, almost surgical. They identify the cracks that could one day split the walls of Terra itself, and it is these they send back to the throne. In this way, their words are like poisoned needles, small but deadly if ignored. Some tales claim that the eyes employ hidden astropathic choirs bound only to them, cells raised in silence and sworn never to name their masters. Others say they bear relics of psychic resonance, shards of crystal taken from the Emperor's own sanctum that allow them to project thought across the veil. The truth, as ever, remains veiled. And perhaps this secrecy is deliberate, for if any enemy could chart the channels by which the eyes communicate, they could cripple the Custodes before the strike is ever made. Yet there are instances where the warning is not words alone. In rare moments, the eye himself moves into battle. Clad in black, but carrying no weapon but what he can scavenge, he fights beside his golden brethren when the crisis demands it. Witnesses recount a hooded figure striding into the fray, wielding a fallen spear or seizing a bolter from a dying hand, his movements slower than in his prime, yet guided by centuries of unmatched skill. For the soldiers who fought beside him, it was as if a shadow of the Emperor's court had descended to stand among them. The battle always ended swiftly, and the figure vanished before dawn. In such moments the truth is laid bare. The eyes are not retired. They are never retired. They are a second skin to the 10,000, a hidden stratum of vigilance, extending the throne's sight far beyond its walls. Their messages are as much weapon as their spears once were. To ignore them is to court disaster. And though the Imperium does not know it, countless lives have been preserved by these black messages. A war never fought, a rebellion never ignited, a demonic incursion smothered before its first scream. The galaxy continues to spin, never knowing that its balance was preserved by warnings that few will ever admit existed. The eyes do not fight in legions. They fight in words, in whispers, in messages sealed by fear. And the 10,000 listen. The eyes of the galaxy look always for banners. Wars are remembered by their grand clashes, by the thunder of titans, by the banners of astartes unfurled across burning skies. Yet the eyes of the Emperor wage battles that few will ever know, and their victories are measured not in parades, but in silences. Consider the reports of uprisings that never began. On Vera Tertius, an underhive cult dedicated to a forgotten Xenos idol was whispered to have prepared for a massacre during the feast of the Emperor Ascendant. Witnesses claim that on the eve of the festival, a hooded stranger walked into their shrine. No one saw him leave. The next morning, the cult had vanished, its symbols burned into ash, its leaders never found. The celebrations continued without disruption, and the populace never knew how close they had come to annihilation. The administratum recorded nothing but normalcy. Yet among the surviving whispers, it is said that one figure in black watched from the edge of the procession, then was gone. Or take the campaign of the Syndral Reach, where an entire void fleet of renegade Imperial Navy ships disappeared into the warp, their last astropathic cries cut short. Weeks later, the fleet re-emerged, empty, gutted, its crew slaughtered in silence. No record exists of the battle, no record of the Custodes ever leaving Terra. But the wreckage bore marks familiar only to those who had seen Guardian spears in motion. A single eye, it is murmured, had guided the fleet into a trap of warp-born horror, sacrificing it so that it could never threaten the Segmentum Solar. Such acts leave no monuments. They are victories buried under falsified ledgers, rewritten reports, or convenient lies told by local authorities who wish to pretend nothing happened. Yet for the Adeptus Custodes, the truth requires no proclamation. It is enough that the threat is ended. It is enough that Terra remains unscathed. And still, there are times when the eyes fight not alone, but side by side with their golden kin. These moments are rare, for the eyes are shadows, not warriors of the line. Yet in moments of dire peril, they are known to reappear, stepping back into the light they once surrendered. Battles of this kind are spoken of with a hushed reverence, as if recalling visions rather than facts. One such tale speaks of a strike against a demon-worshipping cabal hidden in the ice caves of Obrex. When the Custodes descended, their aura might gleamed in the pale light. But among them walked one robed in black, carrying only a plain blade scavenged from the cultists he slew. The Custodians called him Frater Stillus, the Silent Brother. He fought with the precision of centuries, slower than his kin, yet guided by perfect purpose. When the battle ended, and the last demon was banished to the void, the black-robed figure was gone. Only a single word, carved into the ice with the point of his blade, remained. Vidi, I saw. The philosophy of the eyes is written into such deeds. They are not there to win glory. They are not there to be remembered. They are there to see, to intervene only when the fabric of the Imperium itself trembles. They are the hand unnamed, the blade unseen, the one who ensures that threats never rise high enough to cast shadows upon Terra. To those who wonder whether the eyes despair, stripped of gold and forced into anonymity, the answer is written in their silence. They are custodians still. They need no recognition, no remembrance. Their victories are the unrecorded moments when billions live on, never knowing the abyss that almost swallowed them. The eyes do not seek remembrance. Their triumph is that they are forgotten. When the body yields to years of struggle, when even the mightiest sinew falters and the voice of war dims, the service of an eye does not always end. For some, there is one final petition, a request made not to the Imperium at large, nor to the Senatorum Imperialis, but whispered to their own kin. These are the eyes who seek interment, not burial. They ask for the sarcophagus of the dreadnought, the iron reliquary that grants both eternity and prison in a single breath. It is a controversial desire. For the Custodes are not the astartes who often walk the galaxy in iron shells long after flesh has failed them. The 10,000 rarely entomb their number. Each custodian is an artifact of deliberate, singular creation, a masterpiece designed for presence as much as for power. To place such a being in a sarcophagus is to silence half his purpose. Yet the eyes who ask this are different. They have already stepped away from the visible glory of Auramite, already surrendered their place in the gleaming ranks of the throne. For them, a dreadnought's frame offers not dishonor, but continuity. There are rare records, half hidden, half denied, of black-robed eyes becoming venerable engines of war. In these forms, they no longer walk the marketplaces and underhives of the Imperium. Instead, they rest within the vaults of Terra, waiting until the Captain General calls upon them. And when they rise, it is not as anonymous wanderers, but as monuments of vengeance. A contemptor. Dreadnought piloted by an eye is said to bear no heraldry, no ornamentation. Its plating is black, its weapons plain, its only marking the sigil of the Aquila etched into iron. On the battlefield it advances with a grim, silent fury, each strike carrying the patience of centuries. But most eyes do not seek this fate. They pass instead into shadows so deep that no record remains. They vanish into pilgrim lines, into cargo ships, into forgotten shrines, where their watch continues unseen until the end. Their graves are unmarked, their deeds remembered only in the quiet annals of the 10,000. It is said that the Custodes never forget the names of their fallen, even when the galaxy does. In the hidden sanctums beneath the palace, a chamber of memory holds the tokens of those who became eyes. Fragments of augmetic eyes, broken blades, robes folded neatly into silence. These relics are not displayed, for their power lies not in public reverence but in eternal witness. There is philosophy woven into their twilight. To be an eye is to accept that service is unending, death is not dismissal, anonymity is not erasure. Even as ashes, their presence lingers, as though the very memory of their gaze wards against betrayal. The Imperium is vast, its wounds endless, its dangers uncountable. Yet within its arteries there move shadows, unseen but unforgotten, whose sight remains fixed always upon the throne. The paradox of their existence rests heavy. The greatest warriors of mankind choose exile, facelessness, silence. And in so doing, they guard Terra as surely as those who stand resplendent in auramite before the eternity gate. Their triumph is not carved into monuments, nor sung in litanies. It is felt in the stillness after the storm, in the rebellion that never ignited, in the war that never came. In the end, their story dissolves into silence. A custodian lays down his spear, takes up the robe, and walks into shadow. Perhaps he will live long enough to see centuries of secret service. Perhaps he will one day request the tomb of iron. Perhaps he will vanish and be remembered only in whispers. Yet in every case his gaze endures. The Emperor is never blind, for his eyes are never closed. And so the chronicle ends where it began, at the threshold of the gilded gates, where a warrior sets aside his splendor and steps into eternity's shadow. The golden light fades, the black robe remains, the eye sees still,